Welcome back to the last and the final session of literary adaptation, chapter 5, creative practice and course assignments. Theory and analysis provide essential foundations, but adaptation is ultimately a creative practice, one you will engage with directly through course assignments, designed to develop both your critical thinking and your creative capabilities. The chapter outlines the major creative projects that form the centerpiece of most adaptation courses, designing and executing your own adaptation of a literary text, accompanied by critical reflection on your methodology and choices. Creating an adaptation requires synthesizing everything we have explored, understanding historical contexts, navigating ethical considerations, making informed decisions about media and form, and executing your vision with skill and thoughtfulness. The process will deepen your understanding of both your chosen source text and adaptation theory itself, as you discover through practice the challenges and opportunities that adapters face. Designing your own adaptation. Your major course assignment asks you to create an original adaptation of a literary work, transforming it into a new creative form of your choosing. This project offers remarkable flexibility. You might adapt a classic novel, contemporary short story, a poem, a play, or even another adaptation, creating what theorists call a second degree adaptation. The key is selecting source material that genuinely interests you and lends itself to the transformation you envision. Short film or video, 5 to 10 minutes, visual adaptation with original cinematography, sound design and editing, creative writing, short fiction, poetry, or dramatic script that transforms a source into new written form, digital or social media, website, Instagram, story sequence, podcast, or other digital native adaptation format. Performance, staged reading, musical interpretation, or embodied adaptation with documented performance. The assignment explicitly encourages experimentation with genre, style, and medium. You may transpose a Victorian novel into a contemporary setting, transforms a realistic short story into magical realism, adapt a serious literary work as parody or satire, or create a mashup combining multiple source texts. The goal is not to demonstrate technical mastery or professional level production, but to engage deeply and creatively with your source material, making deliberate choices that reveal your interpretation and demonstrate understanding of adaptation theory. The best student adaptation are those where creators take risks, make bold interpretive choices, and use their chosen medium affordance to create something genuinely new while maintaining meaningful connections to the source text. Don't play it safe, surprise yourself and your audience. As you design your project, consider what aspects of the source text most interest you. What does your chosen medium do well that the original medium couldn't? What contemporary contexts or concerns might inform your adaptation? What audience are you creating for? And what knowledge can you assume they bring? How well you balance creative freedom with respect for the source? These questions should guide your planning and appear in your critical introduction and the scholarly context. Your creative adaptation must be accompanied by a two-page critical introduction that suits or situates your project's within adaptation studies and literary scholarship. This essay serves multiple functions. It demonstrates your understanding of adaptation theory, explains your creative methodology and the choices, and reflects on what you learned through the adaptation process. The introduction bridges creative practice and scholarly analysis, showing how theory informs practice and practice thesis theory. Contextualize your source. Briefly introduce your source text, its literary historical context, and the key themes or features relevant to your adaptation. Articulate your approach, explain your adaptation strategy, what type of adaptation, where Wagner or other frameworks are you creating and why. Discuss key decisions, analyze 2 to 3 significant creative choices, connecting them to adaptation theory and your interpretive goals. Engage with theory, reference relevant adaptation scholars, demonstrating how their concepts eliminate your project, reflect on process. What did you learn about adaptation, your source text, and your chosen medium through this creative work? Strong critical introductions avoid simply describing what you did. They analyze why you made specific choices and what theoretical or interpretive work those choices accomplish. For instance, if you adapted a Jane Austen novel into contemporary setting, do not just note the setting change, explain how this transposition allows you to explore continuities and differences in gender politics, class structures, or romantic conventions between Regency England and today. Connect your decisions to concepts from adaptation theory, Hutchinson's idea about mode shifts, debates about fidelity and creativity, consideration of audience and context. You'll also prepare to present your adaptation project orally to the class, assuming an audience of knowledge peers who have read your source text. This presentation should showcase your creative work while highlighting key interpretive theoretical dimensions. Think of it is a defense of your creative and scholarly choices, an opportunity to guide your audience's reception of your adaptation while demonstrating the thoughtfulness underlying your work. Now let's go to chapter 6, the last chapter of today, case studies and exemplars. Learning about adaptation theory gains depth and nuance through sustained engagement with specific examples. This chapter examines several iconic literary adaptations that have shaped adaptation's history and practice. Considering both celebrated successes and instructive controversies, we will analyze what makes certain adaptations endure across generations, while others fade, how different adapters have approached the same source material with radically different results, and what these case studies reveal about adaptation as formal and cultural practice. These examples span different media, historical periods, and adaptation strategies, offering models for your own creative work while illustrating the theoretical concepts in practice. Pay attention not just to what adapters changed or preserved, but to the reasoning behind their choices and the contexts that shaped their decisions. Iconic adaptations and their impacts. Certain adapted works achieve such cultural prominence that they shape how audiences understand both the source text and adaptation itself. Jane Austen's sense and sensibility provides a fascinating case study in adaptation's evolution. Since its 1811 publication, this novel has been adapted for stage, film, television, web series, and even YouTube modernization, with each version reflecting its era's aesthetics, values, and media technologies. The 1995 film adaptation with Emma Thompson's Academy Award-winning screenplay and Ang Lee's direction balanced Austin's iconic narrative voice and with a cinematic emotion and visual beauty demonstrates how successful adaptations honor source material while embracing their medium's strengths. Subsequent adaptations include 2006 BBC miniseries that uses television's longer format to explore subplots and minor characters more fully, and various web series that transpose the story to complementary American settings, replacing letters with texts and social media posts. Frankenstein's Multiple Lives, Mary Chevel's 19 or 1880s novel has generated countless adaptations from the iconic 1931 Universal film to contemporary reinterpretations, exploring themes of creation, responsibility, and monetarity across changing cultural contexts. Dawn adaptations evolution. Frank Herbert's complex 1965 novel resisted successful adaptations for decades. David Lynch's 1984 version was critically savaged, while Dennis Villeneuve's 2021 adaptation succeeded by embracing serialization, technological advances, and changed cultural readiness for complex science fiction. Station 11 literary prestige TV. Emily St. John Mandela's novel became an acclaimed HBO Max series that both faithfully adapted and meaningfully expands the source, adding storyline as and the character development that complement rather than complement with the original. These case studies reveal several key insights. First, no single correct adaptation exists. The same source can generate multiple valid but radically different interpretations. Second, adaptation success depends partially on matching source materials, depends on two medium capabilities and cultural movement readiness. Third, the most memorable adaptations often take creative risks rather than pursuing slavish fidelity, using transformation to eliminate aspects of source text that straightforward adaptation might obscure. Student success stories and innovative projects. Some of the most innovative and delightful adaptations, some come from students in adaptation courses who approach familiar texts with fresh perspectives and fearless creativity. These students' projects demonstrate that sophisticated adaptation doesn't require massive budgets or professional equipment. It requires thoughtful engagement with the source material, creative use of valuable media, and willingness to take interpretive risks. One memorable student project adapted Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow wallpaper as an Instagram story requires posted in real time over several days with images of yellow wallpaper gradually overtaking the feed as the narrator's psychological state deteriorates. The project brilliantly exploited Instagram's visual focus and temporal serialization while adding contemporary resonance by situating the story within the social media culture's performance of domestic perfection. Another student created a parody sing along, adapting Pride and British scenes to popular songs with rewritten lyrics that highlighted the class dynamics and romantic conventions while inviting audiences participation. This project demonstrated how humor and musical adaptation can illuminate source text while creating genuinely entertaining experiences that reach beyond typical academic audiences. Fake social media profiles. Students created authentic seeming Instagram, X, or TikTok accounts for literary characters, requiring deep characters analysis to maintain consistency across posts while imagining how historical figures would navigate contemporary platforms. Multimodal mashups, creative combinations of text, image, video, and sound that resist a single medium categorization. For example, an illustrated short story with embedded audio clips and hyperlinked supplementary materials, critical parodies, adaptations that use humor and exaggeration to expose problematic aspects of source text while demonstrating sophisticated literary analysis through creative practice. What makes these students' projects successful isn't the technical polish, but interpretive depth and creative risk taking. The best projects reveal new dimensions of familiar texts, use their chosen media thoughtfully rather than arbitrarily, and demonstrate that creators genuinely engaged with adaptation theory while developing their work. They prove that creative practice can be rigorous scholarship, not replacing traditional academic writing, but complementing it through different moods of analysis and expression. These examples should inspire rather than intimidate your they show what is possible when students fully embrace adaptations, creative and critical potential. Conclusion, the future of literary adaptation. As we conclude this course, it's worth considering where literary adaptation is headed to our rapidly evolving media landscape. The digital revolution has already transformed adaptation practices dramatically, and the emerging technologies promise even more radical changes. Visual reality and augmented reality offer a possibility for immersive storytelling that makes readers, viewers, active participation or participants, and adapted narratives. Artificial intelligence raises fascinating and troubling questions about machine-generated adaptations and algorithms, all algorithmic storytelling. Social media platforms continue evolving, creating new aspects and new spaces for serialized uh, participatory and interactive adaptations. Yet, despite these technological transformations, the fundamental human impulses driving adaptations remain constant. The desire to revisit beloved stories, to see familiar narratives through lenses, to participate in ongoing cultural conversations, and to make old texts speak to contemporary concerns. Adaptation will continue thriving because humans are fundamentally storytelling creatures who create meaning through dialogue between past and present, tradition and innovation, text and interpretation. Global perspectives, increasing attention to Western adaptation, traditions, and cross-cultural adaptations, literary value, continued negotiation of what counts as literature and legitimate adaptation, representation, ongoing debates about authentic representation and who adapts whose stories, new technologies, VR, AR, AI, and emerging platforms creating unprecedented adaptation possibilities, remix culture, democratic participation in cultural production through digital tools and platforms. The expanding landscape of adaptation in the digital age means more opportunities for creative expression, but also more responsibility for thoughtful ethical practice. As you move forward from this course, whether creating your own adaptation or analyzing others, carry with you critical framework and ethical consideration. We will explore remembering that every adaptation is an interpretive with practical and cultural dimensions, that transformation can be a form of critical or form of critic and commentary, and that respecting source material doesn't mean refusing to challenge or reimagine it. Embrace hybridity, diversity, and the new media forms. The future of adaptation belongs to those willing to experiment, to those who understand that honoring literary tradition sometimes means transforming it radically, and those who recognize adaptation as both critical inquiry and creative expression. Go forth and adapt boldly or boldly. Let's revise what we said um, in these two chapters, chapter 5, creative practice and course assignments, from theory to practice, the adaptive process. Understanding adaptation intellectually offers fundamentally from practicing it. Theory eliminates principles and possibilities. Practice confronts concrete challenges and demands specific choices. This chapter bridges that gap, offering frameworks and assignments that translate theoretical understanding into creative work. Through hands-on engagements with adaptation, students develop a deeper appreciation for the complexity and artistry involved, while discovering their own creative voices. The adaptive process begins not with writing, but with deep critical engagement with source material. Before adapting anything, one must understand what one is adapting, not just plot and the character, but tune, themes, structure, and the specific qualities that make the source distinctive. This analytical phase is itself creative, requiring interpretive decisions about what matters most in the original work. So let's start with assignment 1, close reading for adaptation. Objective: develop skills in analyzing sources materials through an adapter's lens. Select a short story, 2,000 words to 5,000 words, and conduct close reading specifically oriented toward adaptation rather than analyzing the story or for its own sake. Examine it with questions an adapter would ask. What is the story emotional core, the feeling or experience it creates in readers? What elements are intrinsic to the plot versus specific to the literary medium? What role does the narrative voice play, and how might it functions to be fulfilled in another medium? What sensory detailed images or moments feel inherently cinematic, theatrical, or sonic? Where does the story power reside in a language itself, in plot developments, and character psychology, and thematic resonance? What aspects would be most difficult to translate to another medium and why? Write 1,000 to 2,000 words analytical essay presenting your findings. Identify at least three significant adaptive challenges and propose potential solutions for each. Consider how to different media, film, theater, audio drama, graphic novel might handle these challenges differently. This assignment trains students to read as adapters, attentive not just to what a text say or a text says, but to how it achieves its effect and how these effects might be recreated through different means. This discipline of articulating the challenges and solutions prepares students for the actual work of translations and transformation. Assignment 2, scene adaptation across media. Objective practice, translating a literary scene into different media forms. Choose a single significant scene from a novel or short story, approximately 500 to 1,000 words of source material. Adapt this scene three times for three different media. Film, television, screenplay format. Write the scene as it would appear in a screenplay, including scenes, headings, actions, lines and dialogues. Pay attention to what can be shown versus told, how camera analogies or editing might convey meaning, and how to suggest visual and auditory elements that replace literary description. Stay in a stage play format of theoretical space. How does the space and the absence of close-ups, location changes, or special effective shape your choices? How can dialogue blocking and stage crafting convey what film might show visually? Read drama slash audio script. Create an audio only version of the scene using only sound effects, music, dialogue, and potentially narrations. Consider how to create special and spatial awareness, convey action, and maintain clarity without visual information. Assignment 3, perspective shift adaptation. Objectives explore how point of view affects narrative meaning and adaptation choices. Take a scene from any narrative told from one character's perspective. Adapt this is seen by shifting to another character's point of view. This could mean retelling a third-person limited scene from a different character's third-person limited perspective, converting a first-person narrative to another character's first-person account, transforming an omniscient narration into a specific character's subjective evidence or experience, moving from internal monologue to external observation, or vice versa. The adaptation should be 750 to 1,500 words and should remain the same medium as the source. If adapting prose, write prose. If adapting a screenplay, write screenplay. However, the shift in perspective should reveal new information, emotional shadings, or thematic dimensions that the original perspective obscured. Follow with a 500-word analytical reflection discussing how perspective shift functions as a form of adaptation. What did the change in viewpoint reveal? How did it affect reader sympathy, information access, or thematic emphasis? What does this exercise suggest about the relationship between point of view and meaning? This assignment demonstrates that adaptation involves interpretation even when staying within the same medium by foregrounding perspective, since to recognize how seemingly object narrative elements actually depend on specific perceptual positions. This understanding proves valuable when adapting across media where point of view question become even more complex. Assignment 4, cultural translation. Object grapple with the challenges. Assignment 4, objective grapple with the challenges and the ethics of adapting across cultural contexts. Select a narrative from one cultural context and imagine it in another. Considering what changes when cultural specifics shifts, this could involve uh, transposing a story to a different country or region, moving a narrative across time periods, historical to contemporary or vice versa, shifting cultural, ethnic, or religious context of characters and situations. Right, a treatment 1,500 to 2,500 words, outlining your adapted version. The treatment should describe the narrative arc, major scenes, character adaptations, and and the key thematic elements. Critically, it must address the ethical and creative challenges of cultural translation. What elements are you preserving and why? What must change to maintain the story's integrity in the new context? How are you avoiding cultural appropriation or stereotyping? What research or collaboration would be necessary for responsible execution? What might be gained or lost in this cultural translation, including a 500-word ethical reflection addressing your concerns about the adaptation and how you adapted to navigate them responsibly. This assignment confronts students with the high stakes dimensions of adaptation. Cultural translation requires sensitivity, research, and humility. By articulating both creative choices and ethical concerns, students develop awareness of adaptation, social responsibilities. Now let's move to chapter 6, that's the last chapter of our session for today. Case studies and exemplars, introduction, learning through example, while theoretical frameworks and creative exercises provide essential foundations, examining specific adaptations in depth, revealing how abstract principles operate in practice. Case studies demonstrate the indefinite variety of solutions adapters find to common challenges and the interpretive choices that distinguish one adaptation from another, and the complex interplay of artistic vision, commercial pressures, cultural contexts, and historical moments. This chapter presents detailed analysis of significant adaptations across media, genres, and historical periods, offering models for critical engagement with adaptive work. Each case study examines not only what choices were made, by why they might have been made, and what their consequences are. By studying with both celebrated successes and instructive failures, students develop critical vocabulary for discussing adaptation and recognizing patterns that transcend individual works. These examples should inspire further exploration. Each case study could support an entire course of itself. So we will have just one case study, To Kill a Mockingbird novel to film 1962. Harper Lee's 1960 novel presented a distinctive challenges for adaptation. Its first person narration through young Scout Finch's perspective provides a source of much of its power, offering both childhood innocence and mature retrospection. The novel is episodic structure, its multiple subplots, and its delicate balance of social criticism and nostalgic warmth all required careful handling. Screenwriter Horton Foote made strategic choices that fundamentally shaped the adaptation's character. He preserved the essential plot centered on Tom Robinson's trial, and our Atticus Finch's defense of the fallacy accused black man, while streamlining many subplots and secondary characters. Mrs. Dupuis' subplot disappeared entirely, as did much of the Scouts' school experience and various neighborhood incidents. These compressions allow the film to focus intensely on the trial narrative and the the children coming of age through exposure to justice. So thank you so much for watching me teaching you one of the most important subjects in the second year of English department, literary adaptation. So I hope you understand everything well. So if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact with me via WhatsApp to ask your questions. Until next time, tata for now.